Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check the left phone for going full evacuation at this time. They're pulling them out.
911, advise ready for camp.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Chuck, and Doc is still here with me guest hosting today because Tom is still out doing his Spam-A-Lot play, getting ready for opening day. So what's up, Doc? How are you?
Well, what's
wonderful.
up, Doc?
Yeah, what up? Doing good.
Nice. And still joining us is Nico and Blue. What's up, gentlemen?
What's up? Good to
How's
see
it
you
going?
again.
So, yeah, good to see you again. It's like we're just talking. So where we left off was you guys ended up getting a place together, little mansion, little 3-story little mansion, playing Guitar Hero and having maids
Suburbs.
cleaning up after you drunk. So
Yeah.
how'd that happen?
Friday afternoons, we'd finish whatever training we're going through that week if we're still in town, and we just sit on the balcony in what was like the Beverly Hills, and everyone kind of had to fluctuate through this area.
It was awesome, man.
Sit on the balcony,
awesome.
cranked Rolling Stones or the Beatles or something,
Guitar
Hero, whatever, and just smashed rum and cokes, like pre-made rum and cokes. Like,
So we had a year lease, and we got evicted around the 10th month mark. So yeah,
held up pretty good.
We had so our whole intake, half the dudes were married. Probably more than half, 3/4 of the dudes are married, but we'd had big parties at our place, and we just, obviously young dudes just achieved our life dream of getting into the special forces, and we're just absolutely just living the dream, man. Honestly, it was probably one of the best.
That was a highlight.
Best times of our life, and we lived about 300 meters from this massive, like a massive oval where we have all these huge rugby tournaments and whatnot, and AC/DC were in town, and we went to they had two concerts, right? The Friday night and the Saturday night. So we go to the concert on the Friday night. It was obviously fucking amazing because it's AC/DC. Cool. The second night, we just sat on our balcony and drank whiskey, and the acoustics were better on the Saturday night because it was insane. So we got two AC/DC concerts in this place. This place was awesome, but sadly we got evicted. So pour a little liquor.
We actually went back there like 7 years later in our career and like got pretty shit faced before we went there. We went there, we smoked a cigar, paid homage, and paid homage on the street. Poured a little bit of liquor to the properties just to like one
for me, one for my homies.
One for my homies.
But it was But look, and I guess to kind of pick up the pace a bit. We lived there during our whole training. We were kind of like revolving doors because, as I said, during our training continuum, Nico, we obviously kind of follow a similar trail, but we'd branch off at particular points in our training. Like I'd go and do the we call it the advanced first aid course. Nico would be, I think he became a communicator. And then, like I said, when I went on my water course and failed miserably, he was on the free fall course, broke his leg because he can't land. But so we're kind of like
scared of the earth.
Two ships in the night, Less terror, more firmer, I say.
Yeah.
And so we get evicted, but we obviously miraculously we get qualified as SAS operators, and we go to the same squadron. We go to the same squadron, the same troop, and pretty much that's the start of our career in the SAS.
And how was that being in the same squadron in the same troop? As
Hated
buddies going through selections, huh?
Nah, I was just giving
He's
shit.
like fucking hated it.
I guess at this stage, I get engaged and eventually get married with my former wife. So I'm sort of the times that the times that him and I are kicking around like stepbrothers sort of are over. I had to put my big boy pants on, and I had two kids. So that's sort of the path I took, and obviously, we're still pretty close, but different kind of different lifestyles after that. Really, they were the kind of the golden years, weren't they?
Right. But you guys deployed together, right?
The third
we
one.
did. So Nico does a few trips. So he's single. He's flying single, and they go, "Hey man, we need a couple of dudes to go on the winter trip." I got to ask, and I said, my fiance at the time just moved to Perth, so I actually said no, and it's one of my biggest. Well, I won't say it's a regret, but you got to be careful what you wish for, don't you? So I turn it down. Nico, I say no. Nico says yes, and I'll let him talk about his first tour with the SAS.
I fucking loved it. I had a great time. Dude, it was fucking.
And that was over winter, right?
It was over winter. It was run around the snow chasing Taliban dudes to their death. It was fucking awesome. Couldn't hide anywhere. We had helicopter assets. There's no fucking foliage on the trees. Dudes couldn't run. Like, the fuck are you gonna hide? They popped their head out of a door while you're in a helo in aerial support. It's like pretty obvious that they're like there with a chest rig and a gun, and they run back inside. It's like, well, where else are you gonna fucking go? There's no tree cover from any of the helo, Tokyo into wherever. So we we just kept doing back-to-back missions to make sure the Taliban, like commanders and whatnot, didn't have any respite between the fighting seasons, you know. So they're elected fighting seasons.
And I guess for context, every unit in the U.S. Army had different roles and responsibilities, whatever you want to call it, in Afghanistan or whichever country they deploy to. So the Australian SAS, what we were tasked with, and that role obviously morphed over time. Certainly before our time, you know, some of the guys like all our instructors and whatnot, when they were first doing tours of Afghanistan, it was all long range patrols, you know, vehicle mounted stuff, and that morphed over the time that we were there. So by the time, you know, us young whippersnappers get brought into the fold, we're doing it's explicitly targeting operations. So it's senior Taliban leadership. You know, we've got the intel guys saying, all right, here's where all the bad guys are. They'll pop up. You know, we got US assets. You know, whatever the shift would be, say 4 days on, 4 days off. We'd have the helicopters for 6 days in a row. And if a target, you know, if a bad guy presented at that point in time, then it'd be, hey guys, quick briefing. To the ready room. Here's what we're going to do. Quick scheme and maneuver, and off you go. So straight onto the helicopters and out you'd go. And that was pretty much the battle rhythm, if you want to call it that, for our rotations when we do, you know, special operations task group. You know, so you'd either be, they were 4 month rotations, and so you'd be essentially, you know, you'd be there for 4 months, and then you'd be back in Australia for 8 months, and that was the tempo. The squad rotate through. And what we're going through now is like a lot of scrutiny has been put on Australian government, and it's not my position to give you my opinion on that. But essentially, you know, if you could call it performance punishment, and our two commando brothers, they were the same, man. Like our government, or we were getting results for our government. They could put us on a pretty little pedestal and say to everyone else, hey, you know, we're getting awesome results in our province. This is what our special forces units are doing. You know, we're fucking kicking ass, man. And our poor infantry guys were, you know, walking, going on a standard patrol, getting shot at, getting blown up. And, you know, I'd like to think that the role we were doing, we were obviously taking the fight to the enemy. So we were you know, projecting out and dealing with the threats and in the back of my mind, you know.
By day and night too, by the way.
Right.
We were doing day operations when everyone else was just doing night, right? We're like, fuck it, we'll hunt these blokes by day and night. We don't give a shit. Fucking kill them any way we can. We're pretty rude for it. We just, because you introduce night and day operations, we had a lot of jobs. Like the Taliban commanders were like, I don't know whether to put a SIM card in my phone and try to talk to some motherfucker by day or by night. And then they put it in a day, and then all of a sudden they weren't expecting dudes to come knocking it, chasing them, you know, at the middle of the day and all this. So it was like, it just made it a permanently hostile environment for them, which is great, which is good. We did our job well in that capacity, right? And it was busy. It was really good.
Well, it's good too because you catch them off guard too. You're keeping them on their toes. Yeah. So I know Doc and I, we were both in the Marine Corps. He was also in the Navy too, but we've experienced some like funny things in our careers in the military, you know, things that, you know, maybe other civilians may never get to see. And you guys were in special forces. Do you guys have the most funniest things you've ever seen while on deployment, or while in the Special Forces unit? Because I know we both have seen some weird, crazy shit. And
Yeah,
I've heard about MARSOC dudes doing some wild stuff, you know. So I can only imagine what you guys saw and did.
Blue's got one, and it's got a really funny joke in there too.
Yeah, well, we're just, you know, when we had a break, we're kind of contemplating whether or not we tell it. But I think we should tell one of the other ones first.
Mine?
Do we have any? What's something funny that was done in like, I don't know. I guess coming back to the dark humor always gets me, right. Like, you never really know how. I mean, you've had all this training, and you're presented with, you know, some. I guess you train a lot, and then when you see it for real for the first time, it's not an anticlimax, but it's kind of like, oh, okay. So it just looks like you're watching a movie, right? But it's always the way that people react, or the dark humor is what gets me, right? Like, just the places people go, you know, and you're like, wow, that's how your brain thinks. Okay, that's pretty dark.
Yeah. It's funny. The funny that you say that, because I was at it was Christmas not too long ago. So I went with my wife's work Christmas get together party. Was like all 6 of her coworkers having dinner together, and they all know I'm a law enforcement. And one of the guys looks at me and he goes, "So what was one of the funniest things that you've ever seen on the job?" And I was like, all right. So I said one, and I was like, well, I guess it wasn't that funny, huh? It was pretty dark. And then the second one, I was like, oh man.
Did he laugh though?
No, he was like, what the fuck? His eyes got real wide, and I was like, oh shit. And the second one, I was like, well, actually, this one's pretty funny. And I talked about how this like naked, big, heavy-set black woman got high as a kite and attacked me and my partner, and then we had to wrestle her. And I'm sitting there on top of her, wrestling her. She's sweaty. She's fucking disgusting, flopping all around, and she's really fat. So you're grabbing a hold of stuff, her arms, fat arms sliding. And then I look back, and she's butt naked. So her legs are doing this, but she's all sweaty, and she has really curly hair on her stuff, and it just keeps going open and close. And then you seeing like the strings come out with just like sweat and mucus.
Oh god.
And I told that to him at a dinner, and he looks at me and he's just like, what's fucking wrong with you?
Yeah. Now we're getting into it. Now I'm glad I'm on my 3rd beer. This is where we get into the real shit.
So anyways, here's dessert.
It was so fucking gross.
Dude, that's so fucking good. I'm glad to hear that shit. I remember in Afghan on like my 3rd trip, I was so shit-faced that I climbed onto the roof of our compound, and the sun's rising. So it's been a few too many Red Bulls.
Yeah.
And I'm on the top allegedly. I'm on top of this roof, right? And there's fucking Apaches and shit flying by, and there's US dudes on the other side of the wall doing their morning PT with their colorful belts, their fluorescent belts they fucking love. And I'm proper fucked.
Doc's shaking his head. You get flashbacks from that shit.
I'm like proper fucked on top of this roof, and I'm talking like, it's pretty sloped. I'm like, if I slip, I am fucked. Like it's 2 stories. And what we've done is we paid the engineers or the carpenters or whatever that were hanging around the base. We paid them through whatever way to build a deck in the back of our like bunker compound, and put in like a kiddies pool in it, built into it. Take a water tank, cut the water tank in half, and make like a bit of a pool. And
right.
So there's some people in there, and I'm getting egged on to cannonball into this pool off the fucking roof. And I had this shirt on, this puppy dog shirt, and I took it off, and still to this day I've never seen
it. From the Hangover, right?
Yeah, from the Hangover. I've never fucking seen it again. I've never seen this fucking shirt again. And I somehow miraculously managed to cannonball into this pool with these other people and not injure myself. Like, not injure myself, not break my back or my legs or my neck or anything like that. And I got fucking cleared. I got in there, never seen that fucking shirt again. And I'd say that that's like a rarity, but shit like that was occurring like
Peter Pan syndrome.
Infrequently between constant mission.
Well,
it was like how you break the mold. We're getting a little bit
work hard, play hard.
You
right?
know?
You hear that everywhere, and it's
absolutely.
you gotta let off some steam, man. You're doing some, like I said, sense of humor is in there for a reason. You got to be jovial about it. Guys laugh it off, but obviously that stuff it keeps score, mate. Like that stuff catches up with you, and at the time it's an easy way to. You obviously got to keep moving, don't you?
Your job is just to stay alive, man. However you break that fucking, like between consistently fucking seeing dead dudes, being directly involved with those dead guys, there has to be a way to break that up. And that humor is the only way that you can really do that. And a few drinks every now and then and whatever just breaks the mold. And then the next day you're like, all right, we're back on it again. Here we go again for whatever period of time. And it's like, like I remember in Afghan, I was training like an animal. I had a dog. I was JTACing. I was coordinating JTAC in the command center as well. And I was training myself as many times a day and doing missions whenever and all this other team training. I was doing a lot and simultaneously trying to teach myself Spanish because I'm just like, awesome. But I'd still find a way every now and then to be like, I'm going to that, like, whenever there was a night, we'd be like, all right, I'm doing this not because I really even feel like I need to, because I need to break the mold of whatever the fuck this is. Like I remember coming back from my first deployment and it was I really kind of wish my family had said something, but it was pretty obvious that I wasn't the same dude who went, right. And these little intermissions and breaks and things in between were probably the only thing that kind of kept me getting to the next one, to perform at the same level, like a bit of a reset, to perform at the same level every time I went outside and I had to cover the back of the guy next to me and vice versa, right?
Speaking of learning, and splicing that in with sense of humor, it just reminded me of something, talking about dark humor. I remember I did this job and I was clearing this dude's body and I was with my mate and we're going through his pockets, like obviously looking for pocket litter and whatnot. And out of nowhere, he's just like super casually looked at this guy and he's just like, "You just punch your last ticket, amigo." We just watched Starsky and Hutch like a few days earlier. I just never forget. Remember that when he's like he's going through his wallet, dude. Starsky and Hutch, Ben Stiller, and he's like opens up his wallet. Yeah, anyway, so it's pretty good. It's just random shit pops in.
I think in military law enforcement, we have to keep that sense of humor going, because we see so much dark shit and so much bad stuff that having that sense of humor allows us to kind of talk about what we've seen by making jokes of it. You know what I mean? Or just seeing the light in certain things where you're like, you can sit back and laugh about it. And it helps get through a lot of things. And, like you're saying, you went on your deployment, you came back, you were a different person and you wish someone would have noticed it. But, you go a career in military or law enforcement and you think you're normal, but other people are like, "Oh, he's different now." You constantly scanning a room, constantly sitting with your back against a door or away from the door so you can watch the door, strategically planning yourself in front of your kids, always having contingency plans. It's taxing on your brain, and we think that's normal, but it's really not.
It's that conscious. You do that consciousness. Languages taught me this one. So the consciousness is like, it uses so much more fucking energy than physical. I could be running up hills and shit. I use consciousness all day on fucking gassed. And if you're consciously on alert in the environment and you're aware that that's more taxing and you don't switch that off, like not only is your body, when you're conscious and you're thinking and you're alert, not only is your body not resting and recovering and healing, it's doing the opposite. It's like burning energy, and it's in a state where it's like, I can't afford to recover right now. I'm busy, alert for a threat. And like too much of that is just burns you out, right? And then
100%, dude. I know where you're going. I completely understand. Yeah, and it's just that's why like everyone would be like at work, I'd be joking around and they're like, "Man, why are you acting immature?" I'm like, "I'm not. I'm just trying to see the joy in everything and not be so uptight, because if you constantly dwell on that shit, it's gonna bring you down, and you gotta have a break from it a little bit."
Shout out to the cops, by the way, because like I don't know how the fuck they do it.
Mate, I've said that.
I don't imagine being like, you can't blame them for being fucking hammers. And the amount of restraint they have is impressive, because it's like you only deal with the problems and the worst problems of society.
Right.
All fucking day. Everyone you rock up to is almost, you know, unless you're just a New Yorker just giving directions on the fucking street, New York police, like for the majority of police, you're turning up to the worst shit, like whether it's petty, whether it's just crackheads having a dispute about nonsense, whether it's like someone someone has got hit in a car accident, is probably going to die and not see their family. Even though you're not getting this altercation, you're still like, fuck, I just watched someone die, and I've got to go now tell their fucking family that they just died. And this 80-year-old fucking got in a bar fight. Now he's fucking brain dead for life. And that's the best case scenarios, where you don't get altercations of yourself, where you're like wrestling giant bloody fat chicks and you're just fucked. And, you know, it's like, and then you get the ones where you're actually threatening to be stabbed, or you're being shot at, or you whatever. And it's like, every fucking day, like, talk about conscious and alertness. We go home from deployments and we get to rest and have some chill time.
I couldn't agree more. So, you know, as a soldier, you go to and for me, I think it's easier to compartmentalize to deal with, because you go to X country, Y country, do the job, you come back home, and there's that little switch in your brain, and you just go, you turn the tap off and it's gone. And you're back in Australia, and you're back, you know, like one week you're in some shithole, the next week you're back sipping lattes at some real fancy cafe in Perth or whatever, and it's kind of surreal, but at least you can turn the tap off. Whereas I've always said that, right? Like with first responders in general, with police, like imagine driving past. I did a homicide down that street, and we got a lot of mates. I got a lot of mates that are cops, and I always said to them, I said, "Fuck, man." They always ask me questions, you know, about special forces. Say, mate, I should be. Let me ask you some questions, dude. Like some fucking crazy shit, you know.
It's wild. There's really no shut-off switch for that too either, because you're kind of dealing with it 12 hours on, and you have 12 hours off, and you're back for another 12 hours. You really don't have a chance to decompress and shut it off, you know.
No, exactly. The other thing is, when we go on deployment, we go home and we're in a fucking bunker or whatever, and we may have some Afghanis that are hanging out that might try to shoot us, which have happened in the patrol bases with the infantry guys. We were kind of in an air base, in a compound, in a high security compound. And then even then, our fucking compound was in that, where the people weren't allowed just to fucking come in with its own door codes and shit. Sure. So it's like layered, right? But if you're a cop, you're like, cool, I'm staying and sleeping and residing in the same fucking community through a thin fucking door of the people that have considered me their sworn enemy for pursuing them in the face of the fucking law for whatever reason. Like, and there doesn't seem to be a great amount of planning consideration for it that I've heard, because I've asked cops about this, but it's like, I don't blame a lot of these guys for becoming hammers. You know, like, you're like, what do you think is going to fucking happen if every time they get called out to a nail, they have to become a hammer, and then they become a permanent fucking hammer? So it's like, you know, there's no management of them. So instead of defunding, seems a little bit fucking wild that you wouldn't just give them more funding so they could have a little bit more manpower to manage some of this shit. I mean, I'm also
more training.
So I might just be like one of those people like, hey, this is how you fix it. But it's like, I don't know. All I do is just have a lot of, and I guess you could say sympathy, because I understand, but I haven't been in their shoes.
Yeah, but it was just that whole defund movement was a whole knee-jerk reaction to something that had happened, and people just being angry and wanting, you know, their sack of flesh or whatever. And, you know, the biggest movement was just, let's fucking defund the police. But I agree, give them more funding, allow them to hire more people, to have more manpower, so that one officer who's responding isn't tired as shit. They're not overworked to the point where you're not getting that guy who's a dick, right? You're allowing him to have that, that breath in between calls and not overwork him, you know, and keeps him happy or her happy. And then you give them better training, and, you know, because there are agencies all around the country, all around the world that are dog shit. They're garbage, right? Because, and it's not that their head isn't in the right place, it's that their training is shit. And they don't get the amount of exposure. They don't get the training, and training is what makes everything. Like, you guys know, you guys trained for a year and a half before you even really went on to do stuff, right? You know, like, so training is the backbone of everything. Learning the basics, and, you know, teaching, you know, people who maybe their agencies don't have X, Y, and Z, giving them that extra, you know, the ability, the funds to do that training will make a big improvement. So I agree, but
a mate of mine, invented simunition with another dude, Ken Murray. He created this book called Training at the Speed of Life. It's traveling around training law enforcement, special operations units, police, and whatever around the world. And he was trying to train him in realistic training profiles, right? And it was, anyway, so he was saying one of the biggest things for him was the more training you do, the more you're able to realize, not that, this guy can't keep up. He's like, actually, if you train him right, that's an instructor's fault. In training him right, if he's passed the criteria for selection to be in there, or whatever, and aptitude and whatnot, he can. It's just your instructors aren't doing whatever they need to get him across. He goes, what a training actually does, it helps you identify the guys that really fucking shouldn't be there. Like the guys who do something weird in training that you'll be like, that wasn't quite right. And you're like, I'm going to go fucking ask that guy why he did that. And then you find out, you're like, that guy should not be allowed to do this job. He's a liability. Not the guy that can keep up a little bit. He'll get there and he'll be fine. It's the guy that went in and you're a law enforcement officer and you thought you would double tap this person on the ground. You're not in a war. Maybe you shouldn't be a fucking cop. And that's why you do extra training. You identify the people that really fucking shouldn't be there, and then you've got an excess of staff and officers. You can afford not to take that person on. You're not in a place where fuck, we need 3 officers. So we're going to have to run the risk,
That's another big issue that's plaguing law enforcement, modern day law enforcement, is that the staffing numbers coming in aren't as high, right? Recruitment is very low across all the board. I mean, there might be some conservative areas that, get more police than others, but they only have the budget for a small amount of people. I have seen people in the academy on training where you're like, oh, that was weird, or you really shouldn't have fucked that up, where they shouldn't be there and they end up making it, and then they stay on and they're getting into issues down the road, or they end up having to train someone and they're all fucked up, so they're training, and it's just this perpetual BS of just dog shitness, I guess, to speak quite bluntly. But I think that's a big issue that's plaguing, because what happens if you had a bunch of dudes who in training and selections were like, kept shooting the hostage, right? But it was only a couple times. And then you guys went down range and something crazy happened. And next thing you know, you're all over the fucking news. That wouldn't be good, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So I think that's a big issue plaguing. Now, my next question for you, Blue, and Nico, is we've talked about some of the funny shit that's happened, the craziness of training, living together, going through selections together. But now you're on the operating forces, and you guys have done so many things. What was something that was either the most fun or the most hectic that you're like, holy shit, I don't know how I just got out of that? Do you have one of the, I'm sure you have many of those stories, but what is one that you can think back to that's pretty memorable?
Yeah, I was only telling my fiance the other day, because I really don't talk much about, I've moved on pretty well from the military, and not because I'm trying to sort of run away from it, but I have a lot of different focuses in my life, right? But every now and again I like to reflect, and I was only telling her the other day actually, but I'd say I've got 3 occasions where I thought I was legitimately going to die, and 2 of them were in training, and I only had 1 on operations, and it was in some of my earlier trips when I had a rocket land sit in front of my car and blow up, and then we were laughing about the time, and it was all good. Didn't really get any. I can't think of any times with the SS where I thought I was going to die on operations, but I did have. I did nearly drown on my water course. That was a sort of neither here nor there. But the worst one for me was I had a parachute accident, right? So, and this was in training. It wasn't operations, but basically, we do a lot of parachuting, inherently dangerous as you can imagine. But I actually had a collision. Another dude flew into my canopy, right? And we were jumping out. So we're at 12,000 feet, and we were getting ready to go. So whenever you go over 12,000 feet, you need oxygen, all right? Because otherwise you'll go hypoxic. Your body doesn't have enough oxygen, and you'll pass out. And if you pass out when you're under canopy or when you're parachuting, it's obviously not good. So anyway, long story short, we're jumping off the tail of a Hercules, and it's about 1 second intervals. We're diving out, just like you're diving into a swimming pool, you dive out and you bend your back legs so that you know, kind of, it's like going down a big slippery slide because the plane is moving at a speed. So you dive out. It's like a big slippery slide. And then when you hit terminal velocity, you kind of come good and you start falling, right? You've got to be symmetrical. And so we're doing what's called hop and pop. So we're jumping out and pulling the parachute immediately. And so the dude in front of me, it's not uncommon for your parachute to kind of fling you 90 degrees, depending on how it's been packed. But this particular dude, his parachute flung him around like 180 degrees. So he's fucking coming back right at me. So as I dive out, pull my parachute, open up, I'm kind of looking around. And the first thing you do is you kind of look in the space in front of you, right? And I look in the space in front of me and I see the dude coming straight towards me, and we're trainees at this stage. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of sensory overload. There's a lot of shit to think about. He hasn't really looked too much, right? He's just fucking trying to get to his toggles and release his toggles so he can, start controlling his parachute. So it's super weird because this shit's playing out in slow motion and this guy's coming towards me. We're sitting around the 30 to 35 jump mark at this stage. So we get this super in-depth lesson at about the 30 jump mark about what to do if X, Y, and Z happens. And we had this lesson the day before, right? So right. The day before I have a canopy collision, I get this super in-depth lesson about what to do if you're tangled, because before that, you're like, fuck, if something happens, I'm just going to pull my reserve, right? But that's not always the best thing to do, particularly if someone else is in your parachute. Right. So anyway, I see this guy coming towards me. It's playing out real slow-mo. And I grab my front riser. You've got essentially from your parachute, you've got 4 main kind of lines coming off. And if you grab the front ones and pull it, what it does is it dips the top of your riser and you can actually sort of drop in elevation. So we were kind of sort of eye to eye, and he's super far away, obviously moving quite fast. I grab my front right riser and pull it in like it's fucking, like it's going to save my life. And I dip enough that I'm not in line with him, but his ankles essentially fly straight into my canopy, right? So I go from having this fucking big, beautiful, massive parachute to I remember kind of shutting my eyes thinking, fuck, this is it. Flies into my parachute and I look up and it's gone from this huge, beautiful canopy to this fucking tiny little piece of nylon. And I start doing these massive revolutions. And I remember it was super surreal. It's kind of like if you've ever had any, people say if you get in a fight or if you're fucking in a car crash, or, everything kind of plays out real slow-mo. And I remember feeling this real ultra sense of calm and just tranquility. And I was just super chill. And I was like, it was like an out-of-body experience where I was coaching myself and I'm like, hey, man, don't worry about it. You've got heaps of time. You're at 12,000 feet. And I just casually check my altimeter. And I remember the lesson before, right? I'm sure it saved my life because if I had pulled my reserve, then obviously my main parachute would have been cut away, my reserve open, and the guy's still just going to fall on top of me. So anyway, I kind of just remember looking at my altimeter thinking, all right, I got a bit of time. I look down and I go to pull my reserve, and all of a sudden I kind of jolt again, and I'm back with an open parachute. And I look up and I can see 3 massive tears, probably like 30 centimeters. What's that in American talk? I don't know. A couple of feet, like 3, like 8 foot, like 3 massive holes, right? And we have.
I was like, I can't help you with that. I don't know the conversions.
Hang on, Google Translate. Yeah,
carry the
so
one.
I've got these 3 huge holes in my parachute, and we have what's called a controllability check. And I do some shit with that, and I'm happy that I can land it. And I've got a massive rucksack. I've got a rifle, got an oxygen mask, and I land like, dude, and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I'll survive that. And then I'm like, fuck, am I actually going to do I? I start stressing out. I'm like, can I land? Like, if I go to flare, I'm landing. Is my parachute going to fucking collapse? So I wasn't sure, and I'm like, and I thought, well, do I go to my reserve? And I'll sort of just. And anyway, by the time I could try and figure it out, I'm already at like 3,000 feet and I'm fucking 8 kilometers away from the DZ. And I'm about to land, like where we do our parachute course is there's these massive, just farmland, right? Probably the same in the States. And And I land in this massive canola field, like I'm talking these beautiful fluoro bright yellow flowers, and I drop my pack. My pack's dangling about a 3-meter cord. And mate, it's one of the best landings I've ever had. I come in and it was just super graceful. I flare, my parachute worked. I come in, I have a running landing, and I just sat on my pack, and I'm like, well, fuck, that's it. I'm going to go be a manager at fucking the local supermarket. I'm done. I'm done with the SS. I'm done with the army. Fuck this job. I nearly die. Right? And we've got and I've got no reception. Shit's going bad. I'm fucking praying like a motherfucker as I come in. Help me, Jesus. Help me, Tom Cruise. Everything. And so I'm sitting on my pack.
Help me, Jesus.
And help me, Jesus. And I pull out my. We carry like these little, like those little GPS devices. It's got a little hand clap symbol. You press that to let everyone know you're fine. Yeah, like those little. I don't know whether like an avalanche. People like in the snow, they carry them. If they're in an avalanche, they kind of send, like a bit of a GPS signal sends out. Right. So no one knew where I was, and I hit the symbol. Everyone knows I'm not dead. And the first person that finds me is actually a female, right? She was one of the only female free fall instructors in the army, and I'm thinking, and I'm done. I'm fucking done with this job. I'm like, fuck this.
And you're thinking now we're both lost.
Yeah. And then and she comes over. The first thing she says to me, right, is like, I hope someone was I hope there's footage of that. I hope someone was wearing a GoPro. And I was like, fucking go fuck yourself. GoPro, I nearly died. Like I was cooking off her anyway. So I get back there. I walk through about 4 fields to get back to the truck. I get back there. Everyone's like, what the fuck? Anyway, my head's spinning. And if I talk about, like, we've spoken about good training, and I had a really good instructor, and he just goes, Blue, come here, don't talk to anyone, come here. And that was the last jump of the day, right? And he gives me just him and I. He goes, no, the plane's still turning and burning, right? He's like, put this on, because we were jumping military parachutes, and I put on a civilian one, like just a free fall, like a skydiving parachute. And he's like, come on, man, let's go. And he got me before I had time to process it, right? And we go straight back up in the air. We go to like 10 grand. Sun's coming down. It's one of the nicest jumps I've had. Just him and I. We jump out. We just cruise. We kind of, there was a cloud base about 5 grand. Just smoke it down through these clouds. Everything's fine. And it was that became the last jump of the day. And it was only after that night I was processing. I was like, fuck, man. But this guy was smart, right? Because if that was my last jump, I don't reckon I would have. Yeah,
credit to the senior guys in the unit. They were fucking holding that place.
Yeah, because it's not the first time she tapped me. Right? In my world, it was like, fuck. I legitimately thought I was going to die, and I already had 2 kids by then. So I was fucking freaking out. I was praying everyone. I don't know who to thank for that. I prayed to a lot of people. So, but man, that was pretty fucking scary. Yeah.
I mean, that's a good instructor, because he knows, like, fuck, if I don't get him to have a good jump after that last shitty one, he's going to want to write this off and be done. Because, like you're already saying, like, fuck this, I'm out, I'm done.
Exactly.
Like, good for him.
Here's the validity. Fuck knows.
Validation.
No, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to keep special needing it. But it's like, here's the problems with wind. You don't know if the next night, the night or the day or whatever is going to be washed out. And then it might be like that for several days. So you're sitting on this, stewing on the fact that you almost died your last jump. And then they end the exercise. And the next time you jump, you're like, all right, you've just got this permanent fear, like dog training. You wouldn't do that to a dog, like dog training of that scenario. You'll sit there and you'll be like, no, I'm fucking out. This is right, Val. You sit on it too long and you'll be like, you do everything in your power to maybe avoid parachuting or something like that, subconsciously or consciously.
Mm-hmm. Mate, to be honest, I never liked it much after that. I was always, some dudes froth it, they love it. But for me, it was always like a bit, I was always a bit uncomfortable, I
think the dudes who love it have never had a near incident.
But you broke your leg, right?
I broke my leg, which was, I guess it was enough for me, but I kind of just, by the time I'd broken my leg and I'd gotten back into it, I'd accepted dying again voluntarily. So
you see, I hadn't. I've never accepted dying. So
I just kind of accepted maybe it was going to happen. Look, so I was a bit of now at the time I was like, Afghan wasn't, I didn't think but what I'd done is in Afghan, I'd really accepted dying. And I'd accepted it. I was just like, anything above that is pretty good. And it took me a few years afterwards to realize like how consistently, like I was just like, I guess we just didn't get that much danger. And now I look back and I'm like, fuck me dead. Like, just like the helicopters constantly taking rounds, and like the ones you hear are the ones striking the helicopter and just beating the helo or getting RPG'd out of the sky or shots here and this and there. And if this guy had run left instead of right, or where you'd gone or hadn't gone or stood or whatever, and just like the worst ones for me were like getting into a contact shots where the guy at the front of the team or whatever would get into contact at the front or clearing a building or whatever. Facing the rear was the hardest and the worst shit that I had to do in the fucking unit. Like the trust to a T to do that disciplined response of facing the fucking rear when you're in a 5-man team, knowing that there's like literally one guy and maybe 5 meters between you and that fucking dude, and your back of your head is towards what is the known enemy is shit. And your duty to face the back and try to fucking, any dude's flanking you or coming up from behind her. It's fucking chaos when we land, right? Like it's Taliban don't know where they are and their teammates are and all those fucking guys. And like we are doing the best we can with the job. So it's like, they could just run around the corner from whatever angle trying to link up with their buddy and they're at the rear. So there is just cause for it. And then just thinking about all the rounds ripping past my head and cracking and shit. And I'm like, oh, they were pretty fucking close. Or just tracking down a wall past my head as I put my head out of building. It's just like constantly like it was an awful lot of just random luck and a lot of just near-death experiences. And that there is like, I never really gave much thought of it because I was in a mindset of like, yeah, I'm probably going to die. Maybe, so be it. Like, fuck it, let's go. Right. And it's because of the attitude and the acceptance of it. It was just like, it was able to allow me to calm, but maybe calm to a point where it was like, I wasn't truly grasping, and glad I didn't at the time of the seriousness of the situations. Yeah. Right. And I was always wondering why when I go back to like series, like, oh my God, this and that. And you're like, I think it was that bad, like in many ways. But now I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, it was consistently.
Right.
I think what Nico was alluding to earlier, like that desensitization. So you come back different, but you don't know because we're like, you're going through this as a group of dudes, right? Or as a team. So you go through these experiences together. You're only abnormal to people outside of that bubble. So, and we don't notice, like we live together, man, and fucking a few years down the track, I was carrying this dude because he had a fucking meltdown and like he was suffering immensely. And I never knew, I couldn't identify the early warning. You don't know, like you never know when dudes are suffering, right? And I guess, the body keeps score, as you know, and you just, this stuff accumulates, but you don't realize it's kind of like everyone's noticing it except you, right? Like, I had a marriage breakdown, and I remember, I just remember being fucking I wasn't human. I had zero emotion. It was just, and I think part of that is like the unit, like military training. One of the world's two oldest professions is soldiering and prostitution, right? Like people are fucking good at making soldiers. They know how to do it. The concoction's like the perfect mix. So, people know how to train soldiers. You get to that level where you just, it's not until afterwards, right? Where you kind of sitting there going, fuck, like when the smoke clears or when you leave the military, you look back, like we reflect now, as a father, I'm just like, fuck,
fucking circus, man. Like, I mean, a beautiful fucking masterpiece of a circus, because it's like I look at all the like the way we handled. Like we went in there, we pursued this, we like I did shit that like on selection I should have become a quadriplegic several times. Should have died on selection. You fucking named multiple times. Like I was going to carry that shit till my back was going to break, and there were several times where I was doing shit where I'm like my back actually may break. I'm carrying like 1.5 times my body weight for 8 hours. But I haven't eaten in days. You should have become a quadriplegic from some of the fucking women that you brought home on our training continuum. They can't all be Latinas.
Hey, what happens in Thailand stays in Thailand.
Hello, big boy.
The burning might not stay in Thailand.
So you'd go and you'd go through training, and then you drink and you'd have these social occasions. That was a coping mechanism and joking, and you'd go back and you do this and you go to the next level and do this and you go to point 4, but it's like a fucking blur, but it's like just a constant coping mechanism with a life that is really quite.
Yeah. By the time you get to the end, it's just like this compiled mound of shit that you have yet to unpack. And then the moment you get a chance to, I guess, have the downtime to unpack it, that's when shit really starts hitting the fan, right? I know Nico and we've spoken about it. One of the last podcasts we did with you. But Blue, like, how did you, when everything was said and done, all the smoke had cleared, you're done. How did you cope with all the trials and tribulations that you had and the hard times in the unit?
I think Blue actually got to see a live red flag from me that shook him.
Fucking rattled,
like proper live red flag from me, that it was like, oh wow, there might be some consequences.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to tell that story because you know, we've spent the last episode and a half talking about how fucking awesome we are because, you know, we did all this training, but the reality of what we've done, you know, the reality of governments and armies taking young dudes, training them, and don't get me wrong, we're volunteers, we're fucking Australian patriots. We love this stuff, or we did, you know, but it's not until you get a bit older and a bit wiser and you can reflect from a different lens, right? And totally, Winchester.
Winchester.
We need a Winchester.
Goddamn America, son.
So, quick start. We're on our Nico's fourth beer. I've got about 20% wine
what
left.
kind of beers are those? Because it looks like the Duff beer from The Simpsons.
Brahma.
Yeah, it does.
It's Brazilian.
Doffman can't breathe.
And to be honest, it's not like we're huge drinkers. Like, this is just, we haven't seen each other.
We spill most of it.
Like
actually we had a squadron of some of America's finest soldiers over in Perth working with us, and I mentioned earlier about a really special day, Anzac Day, and we told these boys, hey, we're not training on this day. We're going to have a huge piss up. We're going to drink heaps of alcohol. We call it piss alcohol, right, in Australia. And so we have our American brethren with us, and I was in the band, right? In the SS, we've always had a band, and don't get me wrong, we suck, we're terrible. But when everyone's drinking, you know, we're doing rock covers. There's always a dude that can play the drums, a couple of guys on guitar. I'm on vocals. Very, very average effort, I might add. But so I'm relatively sober because I want to try and sound decent, right? Which I didn't achieve. But anyway, so I'm singing, and Anzac Day, we're burning it down. Everyone's having a fucking great time, and I'm watching everyone slowly get drunk. It's like I've got the perspective of the whole room, and we're up at this place here. Big shout out to the Grotto. That's our pub. We call it a boozer.
Oh, nice.
So we're playing music there, and it's Anzac Day. We call it Soldiers Christmas. Everyone's drinking like it's going out of fashion. And I see Nico and one of the American dudes wrestling, right? And we wear suits, we wear medals. So at this stage, he's in his suit, but his suit's fucking trash because it's like 4 in the arvo afternoon, and he's been drinking all day. And these dudes, man, they fucking crash tackle each other into a table full of wine glasses, and everything smashes. So Nico and this dude, it's like watching two Neanderthals trying to light a fire, right? So I think it's going to be a good idea.
Well, and if there was ever any universal, like, mateship here, representation, well, he's American, I'm Australian, and we just, you know, like-minded mental health issues, I think would be the best way to put it. And himself confessed as well. And
So these dudes are wrestling, and these young gentlemen are from, you might say they're from the Southern Pines region, fucking great bunch of dudes. So they're wrestling, and they think it's a good idea. These two Neanderthals that I'm watching think it's a good idea to turn Nico's suit pants into shorts, right? So a guy gets one of the stem of a wine thing, and he's stabbing it into Nico's shorts, right? And I'm like, hey, dude, you know, there's like, you got a femoral artery down there. He's like, oh, fuck, don't worry about it. And then he gets a shard of glass. So he's cutting his pants, and he makes these two dudes somehow miraculously through their fucking drunkenness make these shorts, you know, these fucking hot pants. They're about this thick, you know, like 10 centimeters maybe. So, and I could see Nico super fucking drunk, but something was off, right? And sorry, to go back, on Anzac Day, we start at like 4 a.m., right? And so Nico turns up. He's already drunk, and he's fucking swaying. And in the ceremony in the morning, two dudes have got their arm around him. My sergeant major comes up to me. He's like, hey, what's going on with Seedy? Is he all good? And I was like, oh, no, and no one knew, right? Like, because you're all in the same bubble. So if there's a mental health issue, which fucking clearly there was many, but no one can identify it because we're all in the same boat, right? So I literally, this is as easy as this is how it went down. I go up to him and I said, hey man, are you okay? And he goes, yeah. And then I kind of just like got a bit serious for a moment. I said, no man, like, are you okay? And fuck me. I'll never forget it, man, because I could see like the lights were on, but no one's home, right? I could fucking see right into his eye. And mate, he was fucked. Like, he was absolutely wrecked, and he just broke down then and there. And I kind of like, fuck,
Right.
I didn't know what to do, and I looked around, and like, he's one of my best mates. I looked left and right, no one could see it. And he's drunk as shit. I put his arm around me, and we walk outside. And at this stage, our pub is like near, we call it the patch. So where all the married guys live is like in the one area. There's like probably 200 houses where all the families are, and the pub's on top of the hill. So I'm like freaking out. I'm like, fuck, I've got to get him back to my house. So, and it's probably 300 meters away, right?
300 yards.
Like 333 yards. And so I'm walking him home. And
For those who count in freedom.
Freedom for us. And I'm walking him home, and we're taking 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and he's just fucking having an absolute breakdown, fucking crying, screaming, and I was like, holy fuck, this is raw. And this is and you know what? The worst part for me, man, was his poker face was that good. He was holding it, and like all the dudes we know, right? Military dudes, even some that have taken their life, we're like, if I knew the guy was struggling, man, we could have helped, but it just, like, you don't know, dudes are just fucking, you know, they're hard. They're not going to show that weakness, and that's part of that culture. So he's one of my best mates, and I had no idea that he was struggling so bad. Like, and suicide, he's saying to me, I want to fucking kill him, and I was like, it was really raw, and it fucking hit home for me, man. It was a tough day, man, and so I remember I had to fucking shower him. I got him naked, that was pretty fun.
It's like the posters.
Yeah,
you
like
finally
posters,
got your feel of the posters.
Just like the poster.
Yeah.
Just like the posters.
And my wife at the time answered the door, and I was like,
she's like, he's not even dirty. He doesn't even
I was
shower.
like,
And now you're like, I got to shower.
I was just like, don't
He's
even
like, he needs a shower.
He needs a shower.
I'm reliving some memories.
Put this little number on.
Mate, we give him some clothes. And like, my son at the time was probably like 3 or 4. And I remember he fucking passed out in my son's bed. And I remember like looking at him while he was asleep, and he's got all these kids' toys around him. And I was like, holy fuck, man, what just happened tonight? And that really, and that was probably the start of it for you, right?
Yeah, it had started probably like a week or so before that, where it was like got to a point where I'm like, oh, I can't manage. Like, this is out of the bag from me.
Oh yeah.
Like it's not even like, I can't hide it from anyone else. I can't hide it from me. Like, I am barely holding up to existence right now. Yeah.
And and so, you know, and sorry, mate, to answer your question, Chuck, the long way around. How it manifested for me was in anger, right? So, you know, and I'm a really pretty cool, calm, collected person. I don't really get angry. I'm always like trying to be the clown, trying to make people laugh, so it's uncharacteristic of me to be angry. And, you know, I was just fucking losing the plot. Like road rage, particularly for me, I was fucking getting out of my car, like flying off the handle, you know, jumping out. And you know, and my wife at the time was just like, like, obviously the marriage didn't last because I was just, you know, off the reservation. I just, but I didn't think I had any issues, you know. I refused to. And so,
if you normalize life at whatever the military had been, and you go up here, it's really fucking hard to even see that elevation, right? If you measure it from here and here at the base level, like homeostasis, it's a fucking big bump. But when you measure it like that fucking boiling point from a glass that's like half full, now over boiling, it's lost. It's, you know, it's a blurry line there.
Yeah, and you know, I had probably a few scenarios which probably highlighted that I needed to, you know, get some help or whatever, and I ended up, obviously, you know, going to get some help. And I'll tell you what really fucking fixed me up was on my way out of the army, got a scholarship to study an MBA, Master of Business Administration. And, you know, when, like the old monkey, when you've got a branch in your hand, you don't want to let go till you've got another one firm in your hand. And in the military, a lot of us just fucking let go, right? And we're in free fall. And if I had to put a test, you know, success after the military, whether you've been special forces, any role in the military, I think that next branch, like most of us don't know what it is, but as long as you got something that's going to fucking keep that light, that pilot light burning, and to push you in a different direction, keep that light on, you know, at the end of the tunnel, and give you some hope, whether it's learning, like Nico was, you know, never sitting still, he's learning languages, and, you know, you're studying something new, you're pivoting from what you know, you're giving your brain, like, instead of dwelling on the past and dwelling on trauma, it's invigorating to learn new shit, right? No matter what it is. So I started playing guitar. Like, I've always been into music, so a bit of guitar and singing, mate, I attest that massively to, you know, my psychotherapy after the army. And mate, but it's a journey that doesn't finish, right? Like, it's like all four of us in this chat, man, we've all got our own issues, and it's a fucking constant, you know, like, especially if you're a family man, like, to keep a relationship, you know, like, you can get selfish and get angry and fall back into what you know, but you've got to fight to be a good person, right? Like, and to let that shit affect your life. And one of the other things I tell myself is, like, I'm an Australian soldier. Well, I was an Australian soldier, but am I the first one? No, I'm not. Am I the last? No. I'm not. So what makes I'm not special? Like, how many Australian soldiers have been to war and come home? It's in, you know, American soldier, whatever you want to say. So context is another one as well. Where do I fit in the bigger picture? I've been a part of the cog, which is a part of the bigger machine. I've done my bit, and now it's like, hey man, don't dwell on it. Go and fucking live the rest of your life and do something different. That was just a phase. So if you can contextualize it like that, I think that helps as well. Yeah.
So basically, what if I'm gonna break it down, what helped you was basically knowing that there was something that was off and wrong, and utilizing other things to occupy your mind to help you work through these things, so you're not constantly dwelling on the bad and the negative, but doing things that activate your brain muscles and allow you to critically think through other things, whether it be through music or through school, allowed you to kind of get your mind off of it so that you could have that time to heal your brain, right?
Exactly right. And, you know, like, I know, you know, you see in the movies and you hear, like, guys after World War II and Vietnam, you know, and you see these dudes are getting back together in big groups and drinking, you know, but is that really the best thing to do? I don't know. Like, I mean, I know dudes need to get together and fucking, like we're doing right now, drink.
I say,
decompress.
I actually think definitely not, right? Like, I don't really drink that much anymore. I'm like, it's just, I'm caught up with him. It's an opportunity to yarn a bit and catch up. But it's not gonna. Dudes don't want to hear this, but the reality is, everyone that serves in some capacity has like a threshold of mental health stuff that they've got to work through. Even if you've gone through a recruit school, right? You've been engineered into something, and it's going to cause some problems, right? Now, the level and the severity and what it means to you and what it means to who you are and your soul and your journey and whatever, it is there. Now, you would not in your right mind recommend someone with mental health issues to hang out with other people with mental health issues. You wouldn't do it to your family. You wouldn't do it to whatever. To an addict and say hang out with other addicts. You wouldn't do it to. You wouldn't sit there and tell like Christ. You probably wouldn't tell a rape victim to go hang out with other rape victims. It's like, you know, it's like you've got some counseling circles and that you keep that there. And it's like, but I just think that there was a big thing for me the time after was to go into other circles that were more
absolutely
normalized, like him for his MBA around civilians that were like just kind of, you know, calm, collected family man and chasing another, pursuing of a certain dream. Or now there is balance of that, right? Like, still go out of my way to catch up with the guys, and I will. And now I've done that, I can come back and I'm actually like, for guys that if they're in it, I'm like, I kind of know a lot of the way out, so let me help you. Can actually now help them. But before it was just crabs in a bucket pulling each other back into the bucket. Oh, you're halfway up the ladder. How do I get out? And like you kind of pulling each other back down, and that's what it was like. I think, I think no one really wants to hear that lesson, but I like to say it because it's pretty well a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think talking about things and finding maybe someone who's maybe gone through it and has gotten on their other side and utilizing them as like a mentor and being able to bounce ideas off of them and being able to talk to them so you don't feel so alone. At the same time, knowing that you can work through this and you can kind of start seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, I think that's very beneficial. Whereas opposed to if you're going to just close yourself off and like a hermit, you're probably going to get a lot worse and things are going to get bad. So I think for a message from me to everybody else out there that's listening is, talk to someone. And if you have someone that is a buddy that, has served or maybe having issues, just hit them up and be like, hey, are you okay? Like Nico was saying, I still go out of my way to checking with the boys, and things like that. And then find things to occupy your time.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And, like you said, last Anzac Day, I was chatting to an old SAS guy who'd done 2 tours of Vietnam, right? And it was real simple what he said. And it was super jovial, this guy. Like, he was the fucking happiest guy you could meet, man, super smiley. And he just said, he goes, and I actually went out of my way. I said to him, I asked him, I said, how was it like for you guys when you came back from Vietnam? And he told me this huge story. But the short version is we get a lot more help these days. But he said something that really stuck with me. He said, you know what? There's no future in the past. And I was just like, fuck, that's really good. And he said, when I come back from Vietnam, I went and worked on a farm for 5 years. And he went on this, he kind of hid from society, but he said, there's no future in the past. And I'm always, it's like Nico said, you got to check in, but you got to be looking forward, mate. You can't be looking back. What's your next achievement? What's going to be keeping that little pilot light on for you? What are you seeking next? Because, mate, we've all been in the military. It doesn't stop there. Stop there. You've got, fuck, what else are we going to do, man? We've got decades. Touch wood, So get after it. Get after it.
Not you, mate. Probably not you.
Well, I've got red hair, so we're limited at about 40, right? It's got 2 years to go. Sweet.
Well, as we get ready to close out this episode, I just wanted to, we kind of touched on the mental health. I think it's really important. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think this month is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, I believe.
Oh, is that right?
I could be completely wrong, but I think I may have seen something. So it is very important that we are discussing this because, far too long as men or people as first responders or operators, men or women, we kind of get, our feelings aren't really that important, right? As opposed to other people. It is what it is. As definitely as men, we kind of get told, hey, suck it the fuck up. No one cares. You know what I mean? Right. So it's great to talk about this stuff, to get it out there. And, I want to give this opportunity to Nico and Blue. Any final last thoughts that you think can help someone that maybe
I've got one that just came to mind while you're talking, right? And let's talk about, masculinity, dudes that are hyper masculine, that are in, say, a military unit, cops, whatever. We had a tough upbringing. Our fathers were hard. We grew up, there's a stigma, right? We all know what it is. So someone said to me once, 2 things are going to happen. If you're either going to break, which when I say break, you're going to go, fuck, all right, you got me, I need help, and you're going to go seek help. Or you're going to break the people around you. And guys that, we all know one of those guys that are super hard, super tough, they were not going to break. And they think they're fine. They go, I don't need help. And they might not, but they're breaking everyone around them. They're breaking their family, their kids, their wife. They don't want to be around someone who's going to fucking fly off the handle because someone cut them off on the road, or, someone in the streets making noise. You're going to run out there and fucking threaten to kill them. Like, this is all stuff I've done and I'm ashamed of it. But, you got to fucking get help, man. If you need it, and you need it, you're either going to break people around you or yourself. So you need that. We've spoken about humility early on. Be humble. Don't let it get to the point where you drive everyone out of your life. Stay on top of it. Be a real man and stay on top of it. That's what I was saying.
I got one that might be from Doc, might know best. When they talk about you getting shot or wounded in combat, the first thing that and at least for us, maybe it might have just been us actually, but they talk about self-aid. Self-aid, buddy aid, and then PAFA or whatever, and like team PAFA, or like patrol first aid or whatever for us, And like self-aid. Like they talk about, no one cares and all this stuff for masculine men. And it's like, there is a bit of truth to that. And I think it's important not to ignore the truth. The fact that is a real thing and it's not going to change in a hurry and we're working on it, but it's like, it's slow. So it's like the first point of contact for aid is you. And it's always going to be. And it's like, have the balls to fucking go, you know what, come what, it's like it's a pretty significant act. Probably the most courageous thing I ever did was not run into rooms or charging up mountains and gunfights or some shit. It was like, it actually was to go, all right, I'm about to lose my entire career, my fucking identity, my purpose in life, essentially who I am and everything that I am and I've worked towards in the next moment, because I'm about to enter this room and tell a commander that I am fucking broken.
And that takes
bigger balls. That was the biggest balls I've ever had to do in anything in my life.
I agree, man, 100%.
It was like, and it was more destructive than any fucking combat, explosion, fucking anything, man, that I've ever experienced. It was like more destructive in that moment, but it's like, it starts at self-aid, man.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
And it's great that you had that wherewithal, because there are so many people that don't and that aren't here and they're part of the 22, 22 veterans a day commit suicide. So it's great that you had that self-reflection where like, oh fuck, I got to get help. And then Blue was able to notice it, and I know he's beating himself up. Well, I felt like it was too late. Well, there are, guys like me who had that shit happen to them with their buddy in our unit, and next thing you know, you thought they were just a fucking alcoholic. Come to find out a year later, they fucking take their life, and you're like, fuck, I wish I would have seen that shit a lot sooner, So you guys are both here. I'm sure we've all lost friends, but you guys are both here. You're able to see it, and that's a victory, a small victory, because you guys are here to tell that story and to help other people. So I commend you both for that, and to just have the balls and to be a fucking man, to be like, I have a fucking problem, because we're not immune. The toughest guy isn't immune. The toughest chick isn't immune. We all have our breaking point. And I know, Doc, I mean, you were in the Navy and in the Marine Corps. Do you have any type of tips for mental health and awareness if you're going through stuff?
Nah, nothing that you guys haven't already covered. Like if you're struggling, like reaching out and stuff is a big thing, but not dwelling on a lot of stuff. Like that's probably the hardest thing, because and keeping active is the other thing too. Because like recently, like I've had issues and stuff recently too, where it's like I don't even know like what's going on or where I'm going from here, and trying to figure that stuff out. And it's like, okay, do I keep struggling along this path alone, or do you reach out and grab stuff, and realizing at what point do you need to reach out and seek that help and stuff like that? Right. That's the big recognition thing, knowing when to do it or when to just
two things on that. I really feel like if you think you're struggling, you're struggling. Don't like if you just think and you think it may be, that's a yes. Like, don't look for other third-party validations. Look for a checklist online. Don't look for that. If you think you are, you for sure are. And you're probably not even aware how far you're in the zone. The other one, look for where those without central purpose in their life or are lost or whatever, are kind of like, they fall easy prey to petty woes, worries, nonsense, but a lot of addictions. Look for where you're addicted. And it could be work. It could be chasing money. It could be chasing girls. It can be chasing, it can be alcohol, it can be numbnessing in America now from marijuana, it can be all these things. You fill it with these voids of addictions. And it doesn't mean you have to do one. You might do a series of all of those. God forbid you ever have to actually face the actual problem and the elephant masturbating in the room.
Yeah. As well, like you were saying, Doc, like real, we're men, you got to simplify it. Men are like farm dogs. You got to fucking put them to work. Dogs need to work, right? They need to chase sheep. You need to get those fuckers working all day long. If you let a dog sit around, it's going to be a little shit. It's going to dig holes. It's going to chew your shoes. It doesn't know what to do. It needs direction, right? you need direction. You need to get. You need to keep moving. You can't stop. You need to keep moving. Find the next branch, and fucking grab a hold real fast.
True words never put.
I was going to say, if this is where we're sort of ending around the podcast, we can maybe end on a good note, because I want Blue to tell you a super funny story and joke.
Yeah, look, is it a joke though?
It's definitely got a joke at the end of it. It's got a punchline and everything.
Well, I've been a bit reluctant to tell this, so I'll tell it super. I'll try and keep it relatively PG, but we did a job with some American brethren of ours on my last tour, and we found ourselves right up north toward the next stand, whatever stand that is. So this particular scallywag had shot an Aussie soldier, didn't kill him, but he'd wounded him, and I think he killed a couple of Afghan soldiers. So he was on the run. So
he was an Afghan soldier, green on blue sort of thing.
Right.
And so we rehearsed this particular mission, waited for him to present. And when he finally presented, we had the right lighting, the moon, whatever. So we jumped on some little birds and we cruised up north. It's about a 40-minute flight time. Probably the professionally the most rewarding thing I did in my career. So we landed at the target compound. Before the mission even starts, the dudes that get off on, like my mate and I got off on one side. We landed in this paddy where knee-deep water. The little bird goes to take off, but because it's super dark, it starts tracking to the right. There's a compound wall, and the American dude we're working with is like fucking going like this, and it nearly gets his head taken off by the little bird's fucking rotary wings. Anyway, takes off. I'm on a roof, and we think this dude's in an adjacent compound. So the interpreter's calling him out, blah blah blah. And then under my feet, I feel the roof just move, and the commander, the American dude, jumps on the radio. He's like, "Hey, who threw that frag? Like, why didn't you fucking tell us? Where was the frag at call?" And then we realized that the dude that we're going after, he's fucking throwing grenades, right? So he's right anyway. And my team commander's trying to make entry with some Afghan dudes, like some Afghan soldiers, and this guy's throwing grenades. One of the guys gets fragged in the hand, and fucking is just super confused, like. As you guys know, there's shit going everywhere. It's night. No one knows what compound he's in. Everyone's trying to, it's complete and utter confusion. So my 2IC starts throwing grenades through this little aperture under me. And so we hear on the radio, we're going to put dude. Yeah. So I need to get off the roof. So anyway, we're not this guy's he's not shooting. There's no grenades getting thrown. So we think he's been neutralized. And the American dude has got a dog, and he lets the dog off the leash. So the dog's in the room. Now my mate, and this wasn't me, I want to point that out, was my mate. My mate is telling us when we get back to the compound, right? Tells us this story. So he's quartering around, like pawing around, whatever you guys want to call it, in the room where the dude, where we think he's dead. And he comes around super slow, and he sees there's been 2 or 3 grenades thrown in there, so you can imagine what he looks like. His clothes have been blown off him, and the dog is chewing on a particular region of his body. Right? I don't think I need to spell that out. And so we get back.
Circle of the posters again, by the way. Coming back.
We get back to the compound, and by the time we get back from the little bit, the flight time or whatever, the sun's coming up. And so we're sitting around, we're fucking having a chat around the fire, and my mate casually, and this is the difference between Australian American humor, right? And he goes to the dog handler, he's like, "Hey man, I don't want to sound rude or anything, but I think your dog's gay." This dude, man, he fucking lost the plot. He got so mad. He's like, "Hey, man, you don't say that." And we're like, "Whoa, dude, it's just a fucking joke. Dark humor, mate. Come on." It's all good. So, but
I know your dog was eating Atali's penis.
It's just a joke, not a dick. Don't take it so hard. Don't wait.
I mean, it was a pretty, my mate and I had to check his pockets and roll him over, and that was a bit of a it was an interesting night that night. But anyway, we've spoken about dark humor and how to process things, and obviously no offense to anyone in that, but if you take it for what it is, bit of interesting scenario. But, thank you for prompting me for that, because I was
what it is.
I was
trying
trying
for all Americans to stop taking shit too seriously.
I was trying to avoid. I was hoping that story wouldn't come up. But anyway,
I mean, and dark humor is a way to just kind of let loose or make light of the shitty situations. But as we're closing out, I want to give the guests an opportunity to dedicate this episode to someone or something that they want. So, Nico, Blue, floor is yours for that.
Like, obviously, to do this podcast with Nico is an absolute honor. I don't get to see him much, so it's awesome to hang out.
We're literally in Brazil.
And we're in Brazil. We're in Floripa. So it's awesome to hang out with a familiar face here. But we spoke before we kind of started recording, Chuck and Doc, and I told you I'd like to dedicate this episode to a foundation that I've been involved in creating. It's called the Crate Foundation, Crate with a K. There's a story behind that. Google it if you want a really good World War II history lesson. Probably the most audacious Australian special operation mission ever conducted. The Crate Foundation, we take special forces people that are leaving. We run a week-long program for transition, and we connect them. We give them education, and we connect them to potential employers. So, we're doing our bit for people leaving the forces. So, Crate Foundation, big shout out to them, but shout out to you blokes as well. So, thank you very much for what you're doing. I think you're getting a lot of those stories that people need to hear. I know, podcast for me has been a bit of therapy. So listening to other people's experiences, and if anyone listening wants to reach out to Nico and I, we're obviously we're on Instagram, or just chat to you guys. Reach out, say good day if you want to have a chat. Please do, and thanks a lot for having us, mate. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you guys for coming. And for those listening, if you want to hand out your Instagram handle, if you want people to get in contact with you, or where they could find you, or if you got anything going on like your foundation or anything like that, let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We can just attach it to the episode. I'm sure
we'll chuck it down the bottom, mate. And,
send it to me and we'll put it up.
To be honest, congratulations to your listeners. If you've endured our bullshit for this long, you deserve a fucking, I don't know, a medal or something. Talking this, this is a bottle of wine. Go on, mate. It's been
thank you guys for coming on. Again, thank you, Doc, for coming on. I just want to say thank you to all the listeners. If you like today's podcast and the content we provide, please help us out by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever podcast platform you subscribe to. Follow us on our Instagram at war_stories_official, and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you already follow us, please like and share our posts, and you click the link in the bio to hit all of our socials and our media. You can also go to our website, www.warstoriesofficial, and grab some gear. And if you have a story you want to share, you think you have a friend, go to booking.warstories@gmail.com, and I can get you booked. We're always looking for law enforcement, firefighters, medics, but also corrections, dispatchers, and nurses, and veterans. So if you got a story, go to booking.warstories@gmail.com. I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming on. Again, thank you, Doc, for coming on and sitting in for Tom while he's out getting his play ready. Unfortunately, if it was broadcasted, we would broadcast that live for everyone to watch Tom and spam a lot. So we wish him all the best of luck. And Nico, Blue, thank you guys so much for coming on. It was a pleasure. I look forward to chatting with you guys in the future, and maybe having one of you guys come back on, or both you guys come back on down the road to tell some more funny stories. Or heart-wrenching, or whatever you guys want to talk about. We're always open to it. So
I can tell you some stories about my posters when I was a teenager, if you like.
Actually, as a great one. I love that synopsis. Like this would be my favorite way to end it if it was a mental health awareness. As a synopsis, I love how you said if it's funny or heart-wrenching. And I think the key to the mental health success is to talk about the full spectrum of emotions and stories and everything with your mates.
Couldn't agree more.
The truth. Tell me the worst shit you did, the most embarrassing shit, the most shameful shit, the funniest shit, the most emotionally destroying shit, And that's how you start releasing this, and you start identifying like shit for what it actually is, whether it needs to be tended to. Like, oh fuck, what was that? That kind of came up in that convo tonight. But the full range, having the courage to investigate and openly talk with your mates or your mate, the depth of that, not just having a laugh at all sunshine.
Agreed.
Absolutely. True. And Doc, do you have anything to say? Any last minute thoughts?
Nah, I'm good on this end. I don't have anything else. Took up a lot of time and
Doc's
didn't
chilling.
contribute a whole lot. You know, that's what I'm here for. Good for morale.
Well, thank you again, and thank you guys. And as always, if you're struggling, get some help. Talk to someone about it. And if you have a friend you think is struggling, just hey, are you okay? Give them a text, give them a call, and it might make the world of difference. But as always, come home with your shield or on it.
Love it. Thanks, mate.